Hello and welcome back to another episode of the 2020 podcast, Canada's number one optometry podcast. I am your host, Dr. Harbir Sayan. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me here, guys. Always appreciate all the support. Um, one of the things regarding support, before we jump into this episode, you may have heard me say this already, but we recently had a glitch with Apple Podcasts where they actually deleted all of the reviews and ratings that were on the 2020 podcast on Apple Podcasts. We had 50 some 5-star reviews and they're all gone. So I'm really asking humbly, if you wouldn't mind, please leave us a review. And of course, as always, please do share it with your friends. Put a link on LinkedIn, send a text to them, put a screenshot up on Instagram, tag me and tag Nico. Tell us what you took away from this episode, because we're really trying to bring the best quality content that we can. And my wonderful guest today, Mr. Nico Roseillier, who's now his second time back on the podcast, is, of course, the eyewear designer extraordinaire, award-winning eyewear designer, and the founder of the Untitled Creative Agency. Very happy to have you back, Nico. Thank you so much for being here, man.
Thanks for having me. And by the way, I did and left a comment and 5 star
Oh,
to
thank you.
So
Thank you.
I
You
saw
know,
that you did it. It's in there.
Oh, that's very kind. Thank you very much. Nico, some big changes happening for you, man. I'm excited for you. Um, Starting the Untitled agency. I know this is something that's been in the works for a while, but you
Mhm.
finally kind of hit the ground with this now. I'd love for you to tell us, first, who are you, for the people who maybe, have not met you or seen you before? What's brought you to this point? Tell us a little bit about what you've done in your history, and then let's talk about Untitled.
Yeah. Well, as you can tell from the accent, it's not from Chicago, nor from LA, where I lived before, nor from New York. Well, I moved to the US like 26 years ago.
Wow.
Been doing it for a while. I'm an architect from trade, study inter architecture, design, industrial design, engineering back in France. Kind of fall into the eyewear world just by meeting people and really falling in love with it. Just for the funny little story, when I was younger, before I went to art school, I wanted to be an optometrist. And
Really?
yeah, and I tried to go to a different school to do that. And every time there was the wrong path. And then it was like, oh no, you got to do this. And at the end, I kind of like lost the idea, went to the art. And fast forward,
Very interesting.
now I'm in it. So yeah, I mean, lived in New York. I opened my own company in New York back in the days when I moved with a partner. We were doing installation, different, marketing and product and a lot of different stuff, and starting to do things for eyewear company. One of our first clients in the eyewear world was Bevel, with Richard Moore. So love those guys over there. So that was our first intro to designing, but not designing glasses. It was booth design, things like this.
Oh, okay.
Um, then I went on and did some work for Scojo Vision before they got bought by OGI. So that was on the reader side, and that kind of gave me a different aspect of the industry and to the non-optical side of the business. And then I was creative director at Moto for almost 4 years. So that was great.
Moto.
Love those guys over there. Great company.
Mhm, mhm.
And then we moved to Los Angeles for 10 years, where my boys were born. And I was there 10 years with Rem, and then there you go, Rem for year two. And then after that, we moved to sunny Chicago.
It is these days.
Well, for now.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, sunny Chicago, that was 5 years ago.
Okay,
And
Chicago's been 5 years. Alright.
yeah. Already goes really fast. And now in a new venture. So that's really interesting. It's been a long time. People have been asking, when are you going to do something? And I still don't know. I'm still trying to figure out what I'm going to do when I grow up, right? So that's kind of the idea. But yeah, we started Untitled.
It's a great journey, man. I didn't realize that you had, I knew that the architecture background. I didn't realize that you had actually experienced there working with eyewear companies doing design for them in that capacity of, like, booths and things. So Where did the how did you start designing eyewear? Where did that happen? Because I you probably told me, but I don't remember exactly what that moment was.
Well, when you move to a country where you do not speak the language at all, by the way, when I
Wow.
moved to New York, could not even go to Delhi by myself. It was crazy. When I met my wife, I barely spoke English too, which is, and I used to say yes to everything. I think that's why she fell in love with me. Um, but I used to say yes to everything. To like job will come, and there was like, sure, I'll do it and everything. And someday, somewhere, somebody asked if I could design glasses, and I say yes, and I'll figure it out. And that's what I had to do to figure it out very quickly, re-understanding, the mechanics of it. But for me, I thought it was very interesting that, my background in engineering, my background in architecture, and then in design really the three of them mixed it perfectly together to design glasses.
Yeah.
And in terms of the line, in terms of the proportion, and so I really fall in love right away with it. I used to spend a lot of time when I was commuting in New York, looking at people in the subway to see the way they were wearing stuff. I'm sure that
Mm.
they thought I was a freak, but that's fine. Um, and but I do remember the first time I said, "Yeah, I can design glasses," and designing my first one, and was not really what I was expecting when the sample came in. And I remember going home that night and thinking, "Oh my God, what did you just do?" And I learned, and it's been over 20 years. It's been 20, I think it's 25 or 26 brands later.
Wow.
And it's fantastic brands, fantastic companies, great people I met along the way. And I'm far to know everything about eyewear, and I do hope that I never find everything about eyewear, so I can still learn every day, because I think that is the most important path in life, is to keep on learning and
Right.
keep exploring your art. And my style 20 years ago versus now, is obviously very, very different. So, during lockdown a few years ago, I went through my closet to go through all the prototypes and stuff that I have here, and I guess line up close to 3,000 frames, but it's
Wow.
yeah, it's a little bit of a mess. But I'm looking at stuff that I designed 20 years ago to these things that I designed this year, and it's very interesting to see that there's definitely a story there. There's not necessarily a progression. I would not say things 20 years ago was bad. It's just, style change, things change, though, because we link in fashion, things also go back. So that's
Yep.
also a very interesting path to look at. But yeah,
There's
it's
certainly
been interesting.
it certainly is cyclical. I mean, everything it seems like most things in the world happen to be that way, right? A lot of stuff there tends to be a lot of like repeat in history in general. If we go really broad, but like in fashion, I'm like, man, I don't need baggy pants and tiny sunglasses. Why? Why are those back in fashion right now? Like,
Well,
how do we
it's
stop
hard
that?
for us because we live through it once, right? For
Like,
the
but at the time I was a kid, it felt okay, in like the 90s, I was like, oh, that's what people are doing. But now I'm like, oh, dude, please do not bring in the little, those and the pants that are like you could fit three people in. Um, I'm good without that, but that happens. So, are you finding some of your old styles are kind of back in style? Like, is that a
Yeah,
thing? Yeah.
yeah, I see. It's not necessarily exactly, design for design, but it's definitely, going back into the narrow thing. So going back
Mhm.
into, the cycle of thick acetate versus light acetate, it's a
Right.
thing that just go back. It's interesting that, you get you know the inspiration behind it change, so that's also the thing, and
Yeah.
the brands you apply it to change, or from license to independent, whatever it is, you create that story that just bring it the things together. But yeah, there is some stuff that goes around, you're like, oh, okay, like we're back at this, okay,
We're back.
interesting,
Yeah.
but I always say, it's interesting, like when I see, like, my kids, and they're like, oh, dad, did you see this? And I'm like, really? But for them, it's brand new. They're super excited. I'm like, I feel like I went through it already once or twice, but yeah.
I'm feeling so old lately because I remember when I was a kid, my dad used to say, "Well, that's what I used to wear when I was younger." Like, or my mom used to that. My mom was like, "That used to be back in style back in like the '70s or something like that. We should have just kept all our stuff." And now my wife and I are like, "Oh, we should have just kept all our stuff from back in the '90s because like
Mhm.
so much of it's back in style." So I've been feeling a little old because of that, but I'm just gonna keep wearing the things that I feel comfortable wearing. So let's talk
I think
about
this is what comes with, the as we get older. It just find the thing that is you, and then
yeah,
that's what you got to stick to. I think,
yeah.
sometimes I look at some stuff in fashion. I'm like, oh, I love to try this, and I'm like, no, I'm not going to do
Yeah,
that.
that's not me. That's not me. So what's happening with Untitled right now? Kind of what's the vision? I know you say you're still trying to figure out what you're going to do when you grow up, but like what's blue sky or kind of ideal situation? What do you want to see yourself doing in the next 5 years or so with the agency?
Well, that is a good question. I created Untitled because I feel that, I've done so many different things in the industry, and for me personally, I don't see myself as, just an eyewear designer. I design trade show booth, I design packaging, I design,
Mm,
the whole experience, the whole DNA aura around the collection, from the advertisement campaign to, however the brand is going to be presented. This is the stuff that I love, and then it happens that it's also supporting eyewear.
mm,
So, I looked at it and I thought, okay, there's people out there doing, helping other company designing glasses and designing, collection. I mean, there's nothing really new to that. But I thought, okay, it would be interesting to just take all that creative direction that I've done over 20 plus brand, and being able to help a company that may not have the budget or the manpower or the size to get a creative director full time in house. And so somebody that launched a new collection that need help from the beginning, from the trend research to the design to all the way to the execution to advertisement campaign and the marketing side, or somebody that maybe needs more parts of things. And so that's kind of the reason how this whole thing was created, was Untitled. I mean, I've been spending a lot of time this summer to kind of simmer and sit with that, and talking with a lot of people, a lot of my friends in the industry, and um, I'm trying to figure it out, and I think, okay, this is great. This works, and I'm already working with some great company and friends, into helping them along the way to bring their collection to the next level, to new designs and things like this. I'm working with a few company and CEV, Clear Eye Vision.
oh yeah. Mhm.
With Jamal, who's a good friend of mine. Fantastic brand and fantastic people, to be honest. And that's
Yeah,
another
they're good.
thing. I want to work with great people. It's like,
Yeah, yeah.
and collection. It's called Anwuli, with Dr. Amaka, was amazing. I just love this woman. Her energy. First time I met her, her energy and everything, I was like, oh my god! I was like, I got to be friend with that person.
I
Um,
love that.
so now we're working together on designing some new models for next year.
Very
So
cool.
there's a few things like this that that's already started. But then I thought, okay, people are always being asking, when are you doing your own line?
Yeah.
And they
Yeah.
still ask, and I'm still trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
Hopefully one day, it's obviously a goal of mine, but
Yeah, of
I want
course.
to put a date. I don't want to put an
It's
expiration.
gonna feel right.
Yeah, it's gonna
Absolutely.
feel right. It's got to be with the right people. But I do believe that Untitled was also created to help doing collaboration. You and I talked about that before. I love collaboration. I love working with other people, mixing, things together, like the collabs I did with Maxwell, and then
Yeah.
Max and I are still talking about what's next. We'll be doing together soon. there's a lot of other companies and people out there that I've been asking, and I'm working on some new collabs in some ways. And and it's not about the money, making the money. It's really about the art, the story. How do we bring things together, creating something different? And that's really what I'm looking at with Untitled, is to be able to let the process, let the art, let the product, let the story talk for itself. It's not about you know um, putting names on everything. It's really about letting the things simmer, letting the process go, bringing people on board. It doesn't have
Mm.
to be, you know, and I really love that. For the side story, this summer was in France with the family. I went back to see my parents. We stopped by Paris, and if you ever in Paris, anyone, if you ever in Paris, do yourself a favor, go see the Louis Vuitton Foundation. It is mind blowing. Just the building. It's a Frank Gehry building. I'm a huge fan of Frank Gehry. The proportion, the grandeur, the size, it's of the building is just like nothing you ever experienced. But this summer was an exhibit on the 3-4 years collaboration between Basquiat and Andy Warhol, and
Oh, okay.
and it was over 140 piece of art,
Wow.
the biggest representation ever done. And the way those two were working together, and even bringing some other artists to come and contribute into the art, I just looked at it and I was like, wow, this is really what I love. I really realized I love doing collaboration. So, for me, I don't see as myself like, helping or working with like CV or Unwoody. I'm looking at the collaboration. We are collaborating together on how to make things different, on how to bring the story to the next level.
Mhm.
It's really the way I look at it. All of that is about collaboration. So yeah.
Collaboration is, I think, so important in general to help the industry grow. There's a book, Wired to Create, I think it's called.
Mm,
Great book. So great, I can't remember the title. It's called Wired to Create. And one of the core concepts in there is a lot of like the genius, groundbreaking, really kind of industry changing ideas are often created at an intersection between two existing ideas. So you take things that, like, so a lot of times we think about like something just came out of the blue, you came out with this genius idea, but really what happened more often than not is two existing lines of thought came together and created something different and new. So the idea of collaborating, bringing two amazing artists together, or bringing two brands together, or yourself and another creator coming together, that's where all of a sudden like something brand new will come
mhm,
that wasn't there before. A lot of times we just worry about doing our own thing and we don't want to share our ideas with other people, but I think we're doing ourselves and everybody else a disservice, by not collaborating like that. So I think it's really cool. So I look forward to more of your collaborations. One of the words that you've said over and over, which we definitely want to dive into a bit, is storytelling, creating a story. And for you, having worked, like in depth with these different brands and literally designing stuff from scratch. And, I've seen your storyboards or your mood boards and these things in your office before, where you've taken inspiration from a building or a wall. I don't know, maybe like the way certain colors were or whatever. Like to you, you are a creator, so you see the story from the ground up to the point of a prototype to the point of a finished product. But somebody like me, maybe, or someone else working in a store might just say, well, it's just a frame.
mhm,
How do I distinguish this frame from that frame, this brand from that brand? I think that's a really, really, really important point. I know that you feel very strongly about this. I think this is one of those things that if we can dive into, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. We can maybe send our viewers and listeners home or back to work with this, the understanding of the importance of the story of an existing brand and product, and then how to tell that story and why that will differentiate the brand, and then of course that store and that person from other people selling frames as well. So, um, what do you think? Let's I'm going to let you kind of run with that, but the importance of story and storytelling in eyewear.
Yeah, it's I've been very passionate about this subject for a little bit now. It's been a few years, but really, again, had this time creating Untitled to really figure it out. What that means. When so the other day I had dinner with somebody, and that I know through the industry. We know each other from seeing each other at the show, being in some committee, whatever, together with the Vision canceled, or you know, uh, you think you also know people through their Instagram and through the
Yeah.
product. And we had a nice dinner together, and I learned so much from this person that I had no idea. And personal stuff, things that that person went through, and I thought, wow, that is really interesting. And I was thought, okay, we when we go to the shows and you meet people and you introduce yourself, you just introduce yourself
Hmm.
and you have a conversation about whatever the business or whatever. But I thought, you don't really truly know somebody, like where those what made you, why you're here today, doing this. And so I thought, well, that'd be interesting if you could recap, if you each every time you meet somebody, you could use 5 words to describe your story, 5 words that describe who you are. So, top of my head for me will be, well, I'm French. I'm a designer. I'm a creative person. I'm a father of two. I'm a husband, like whatever, I'm a runner, and what are those 5 words? What is your story? And so in parallel of that, I really been describing my role over the last few years as a storyteller because yeah, you saw my trend boards and everything, and it's really what makes a collection different than another, right? So I go to the shows, and as a designer, and especially when I go to Milan is a gigantic show. Even when I go to New York to the show too, and I'm sure I will have the same thing when I go to Vegas in a few weeks. And I come back and I'm like, oh my god! I was like, how much more glasses do we need? I mean, for real. I'm like, I also think
Yeah,
about the
yeah, yeah.
environment. I think about the environment and all of that, and I'm like, oh my god, how much more do we need? And but what is the collection that you remember? You go to a show, there's collection that I was one collection for me last Mido. Mido is a huge show that I got into the booth and I was like, wow. I was like, it was not crazy, crazy, but it's just like the story right there. There was a story, there was a point of view. And when I design a collection, it's always what I'm trying to think. What is the story behind it? What is the collection? When I joined Europa 5 years ago, and I took over State, they had one way of their story, which was the, made in America. That was the story, right? But for me, I always thought, well, it's great, but the product is important in terms of creating a story. And we did create a story around Chicago. I used a lot of the architecture elements in the story of Chicago, and great architect that went through this city, which is really unbelievable. Like
Yeah,
with
the architecture in Chicago is amazing.
exactly. So took a lot of details of that, and, creating a story around it, and you really could feel and see it through the details. So, when I go to, that's my world. My world is, on the design side, on the research, on training the story, creating the product. The packaging is really important to tell the story. This is the first thing you get exposed to.
Yes. Yes.
You see people people who love watch companies spend a fortune in the box,
Yeah.
because this is what you're going to keep. You're going to keep that box on your desk,
Yeah.
right?
I wanted
Um,
to see if I could the box is kinda hidden. Anyways, it's all good. But
I
yeah,
have a
I've
box back there somewhere on the shelf, the
yeah.
Shinola box. When I went and visited years ago the factory in Detroit for Shinola, and and I got a very nice watch, but the
Yeah.
box was unbelievable, and I was like, I got it, kid. And the box told the story of the product open to. So I always look at all of that, but then I thought, okay, how is our industry works, and you when you're not on the road, which you are a lot. You also work in an office in the building, and then you have these people also come and then also get eyewear dispense.
Mm,
And I thought, okay, well, that's very interesting. I mean, we know, and it's not, we know that a lot of the practice get, they pick up the frame. It's a lot to do with relationship, right? It's you have your favorite rep, she or he's amazing,
mhm,
and they bring cookies, stuff, she comes in and you love him and it's great, and that's very important. The service is really, really important.
right.
But when that person leave and you receive the frame that you got picked in the trays and you put everything on the board, what's the story? What is the story? Do you have the right frame for where your practice is? Where do you have for the right demographic? Do you have, all of that is very important. But where's the story? Well, the stuff that you are passionate about telling the story of, oh my God, this is inspired from, the color from Barcelona and this, there's a lot of companies, who create that. And, oh, this is the details that so and so put in because it comes from the fashion world of that brand. And but when you're able to tell the story, when you have that excitement because it's something that is special to you, and you can deliver back that story to your consumer, it's contagious. I mean, excitement and knowledge like that is contagious to all the way to the consumer, and people get excited about it. And then you see it very often, and some people, people do a great job. I mean, my dear friend Julia Gogosha in LA, which her store tell the story. You enter the store, it's not a store. First of all, you're not entering a store, you're entering an experience,
Mm,
and it is absolutely beautiful, just because it's thought differently. Obviously, not everybody can have a store like Julia. She it's really catered this way, but she created that story around the store design, to the way she delivered the product, to the way it's selected, what brand she has in. And she's also amazing presenting collection. I mean, if you ever had, check out her Instagram. The way she described frame is
mm,
no others. But so I think that for me, that's the part of the storytelling. Being able to, from the start, to tell that story, to explain why you've put those things and the reason why they're there, creating that romance around it, and being
mhm,
able to train the people all the way to the person who's going to dispense the frame. And I visited a account, over the last 20 years, and I remember the first time I really experienced that was with when I used to design John Varvatos, and to be able to tell that story of like the fine details, but the rock and roll essence of the brand,
mhm.
how we apply this, and people, it's like, oh my God, people like really, it was easy to explain, it was easy to tell the story to somebody else.
Yeah. Those things go a long way. I think the problem is that we get a little too caught up. I mean, I know this happens to me, and I've seen it, but like you get a little too caught up in just the name brand type of stuff, and like, oh, it's easier to sell XYZ brand because it's mainstream and people know the name. It requires a lot less words and effort versus like, let me show you this brand out of this country, and they use these materials, and this frame in particular, takes the shape of this or uses materials from this, and uh, it's a lot more work to tell that story, but if you're passionate about it, it really comes through. I feel that there's a trend in general to like a little less of the name brand and more of the storytelling. I hope that's true because I personally care more about that too. But I feel like a lot of people like to go to their friends and tell them, yeah, they want to kind of show off. There's still plenty of people who want to show the logo on their thing, right? But like, there's a lot of people. I feel like a growing number of people who want to go back to their friends and be like, "Oh, did you know this brand? They do this," or "Did you know that this brand comes from there?" or "This brand gives back to this community," or
Hmm.
right, supports this kind of, and like it's a story. People like to tell stories. Part of the I remember reading there was this weird piece of research that people choose their vacations based on the stories they can tell about their vacation when they come home. So it's not just like I want to go visit this country because it looks like the country that is like, the place I'd like to visit, but it's like I'd like to go visit this country so I can take pictures and come back and show my friends I went to this country. It's a human tendency, I feel like, to kind of share our experience and what we're doing. And I think the same kind of goes with our what we wear and what we do. In fact, I want to tell you about this T-shirt in a little bit, as part of that to go with the storytelling. But I think Eyewear does that, and the more we can share the stories in our businesses, the more people have the opportunity to go home and share the stories with their friends and family.
For sure. For sure. I mean, I always say, this is the only object that we wear on our face. So sure, we need to see, need to be able to see well and drive without having an accident. But it's that idea of like how do they represent somebody? You know, one day is this, one day is that, but that's like it's an extension of your mood or
Mm,
of your story that you put on your face. So yeah,
yeah, absolutely. So since I've said it already, I'm going to tell you about this T-shirt.
I was going to ask.
so, s- you know, I'm gonna give a shout out to one of my best friends, Harj Sandhu. He's probably never gonna watch this, but he was listening to a podcast. He's into that kind of stuff as well as I am, but he was listening to an entrepreneur who was talking about his life. He's a very successful entrepreneur. This person he was listening to, but he said, "My life is boring. I go to work, I do this, I go to the gym, I wake up early, I do." But those are the things that lead him to become successful. And he said that, I think it's good to have a boring life. I think if you get a little too caught up in the excitement and the immediate gratification of things, then often it kind of leads you off track. And I would say that just that part of the story right there kind of resonated with me, because I think if people ask me, yes, I go travel to conferences and sometimes on Instagram it looks exciting, but really my day to day is I wake up early, I work out, I take my kids to school, I go to work, I come home, dinner, it's the usual stuff, 6 or 7 days a week.
Hmm.
Um, Anyways, that day he heard that podcast, he happened to walk into a store. And look, I like to wear suits and stuff like that. I like to dress up, but to be honest with you, most of my wardrobe is not particularly expensive. I don't care to spend a ton of money on stuff. I like nice things, but I prefer if they didn't cost that much money and they still look good. I'm good with that. And he's walked into H&M, I think, and he saw this shirt. And it's hard to read this because it kind of looks like this graffiti kind of thing, but it says "Boring Pals." And so he saw that. He's like, "Hey, I like that shirt." And then he bought we have a group of like 5 guys that are kind of our closest friends, our, inner circle, and he bought one for each of us. And so we all kind of have boring lives. We all have kids. We do the same thing every day, but we love our lives. We enjoy our lives. We love our families. We love our friend group. So we kind of are happy to be boring pals.
You know what?
So I love this shirt, and I wanted to wear it today because normally I dress up a little more, but I was wearing it because I saw them earlier, and I thought it'd be kind of nice to tell that story as well.
So I did the opposite. I wore a shirt because I know that you always so top
Yeah, here I am.
dressed, and I'm usually just in t-shirts, and so I was like, oh my god, I got to wear a shirt because
I'm sorry.
yeah, so no, I love it. I love it. This is great, and I love the idea of boredom. I always tell my kids when they're like, "Oh, I'm bored. I don't know what to do." I was like, "Great," because out of boredom come creativity,
Yeah,
and not creativity, just like drawing stuff or whatever. Just creativity in the mind. I was like, and I think it's really important, um, to have that boredom in life, to have like make you go and do something. Like my wife always like, she was like, "Can you just stop a minute?" Yeah, I can't stop. I'm always like doing stuff, and I'm like that's the way I like it because I get bored and I go and do something, and I
yeah.
get bored and go do something, and
Well, there's a reason a lot of people say they get great ideas in the shower or while they're sleeping. It's when you finally, or when you're
right.
running. We're going to talk about that in a second too, right? But it's because you're not active. You're just stopped. doing nothing really. So your mind has a moment to just sort of put some things together.
Hmm.
But on the boring note, like I don't find running boring, but I think a lot of people would. But idea of like just having sort of like the same routine kind of day in day out for the most part, so you go running for example, like that's your workout routine every day, you'd run or you do this. People find that boring, they want variety, they want to change their lives up. And I've remember talking to a few people about this over time, and like, and you hear this from really really successful people. It's about enjoying the journey.
Hmm.
And this is, now it's coming to me, we talked about this before as well. It's about enjoying the journey and not just the destination, because really at the end of the day this whole thing is a journey, right? And your days are going to feel a bit monotonous and repetitive and boring sometimes, but if you can find enjoyment in those things, in the boredom, in the things that you're doing daily, when you get to the end, even if you don't hit your goal and your target, you're still going to say, well, that was really, I made the most of that, I had a great experience along the way. And so something I say to a lot of people, people are asking me, "Hey, what's new? What's going on?" I don't know, man. It's kind of the same thing. Go to work, come home, kids, bedtime, do a little more work. But but I'm trying to enjoy every one of those little aspects of the day. I look forward to my kids running to me and jumping at me and hugging me when I get home, or the conversations I'm having with my patients, or the work that I have in the morning. Finding the enjoyment in those things is very important.
It really is. It really is. I mean, it's it's every little conversation count, but I mean, for the kids, that's just they're going way too fast. I told them, by the way, that I'm like, you guys keep growing, keep getting older. I'm gonna take a break, right? I'm gonna wait here for a minute, just so you guys can catch up. But I've been seeing this thing a lot lately on social media about uh, this whole it's a made up story, but like you're on your deathbed,
Mhm,
and
mhm,
think about that moment today. Can you go back to that moment? Can you go back to today? And then how would you enjoy it differently?
mhm.
And it's good. It's good to think about that when you're bored. It's good to think about that when some days, it's like, oh my god, I just can't wait for this day to end, or thing doesn't go your way, or you know every day is different, and it's just that you got to it's look, it's really hard. We all go through that. We're all human beings. It's hard to not be angry one day and then not want to, like, jump on the next thing.
Mhm.
um it is part of the process. I'm a true believer that things happen for a reason, right? So even when it's hard to see it, even when life, universe throws you things to you in a different way, and it's things happen for a reason, and it's kind of the way, one of the reason why I created Untitled. It was, things need to happen for a reason, things need to change for a reason. It's just a very, some days it's faster, some days it's slower, some days stagnant, but it's just part of that process. So I used to think, by the way, that running was boring as possible.
Yeah.
Be like, oh my god. I have friends that run marathon, and it was like, why? Why would you do that to yourself?
Like for 3, 4 hours, you're just doing
Yeah,
the
yeah,
same
yeah.
thing.
I'm like, why would you do that to yourself? I'm like, that makes absolutely no sense.
I
Uh,
can't I can't run a marathon, but I'm about my kinda go-to distance is about 10K.
that's
Um,
good. 10K is
you know,
great.
you get about an hour worth of an exercise in there, and you know, you get time to think, play things through your head while you're doing it. So you've been running for about a year, you said, and I remember you said you just had your, like, sort of 1-year anniversary of becoming a runner.
Yeah,
Uh,
well, what happened is that it was a little bit of too much of a good time. I'm trying to deal with the light here. A year ago, we came back from France after 3 weeks, and food, wine, everything, cheese, everything in France. And
all the good
I
stuff.
was like, oh my god, I was like, I got to do something. I just didn't feel right. I didn't feel good. I was just like, and I was starting to think that I may have to go buy a full new wardrobe of two size up. So I was like, I was like, this is it. Gotta do something about it. And the kids, are brutal. They love to remind you if you got to do something. So I was okay, fine. I was like, I'm gonna go for a run. So I went for half a mile. I came back, thought I was gonna die. and then I went for a mile, and then a mile and a half, etc., etc. Now, I run like 12, 13 mile.
Wow.
Um, I calculate I run between 80 and 90 miles a month.
Wow.
Um,
That's
but
really
for
good.
me, it really became my time, and it's becoming like the time where I go, I think, it's just a different way of thinking, of, like creating. I mean, I'm running, I'm actually working, like in some ways of thinking about stuff. I told you I'm actually, I'm designing right now. I'm writing a course,
Right.
was going to be ABO certified, and that's something I always wanted to do. So, I'm doing it. I'm doing it. I have a deadline, which I love,
Nice.
which is great. It's going to be November.
Good.
Um, but I'm doing that. I'm running, and I'm thinking of, like, how this whole thing is going to go, and how this whole thing is gonna play out in my head, and then I'm able to put it on paper. It's really my time to really think, but it's I need it. It's weird. It's becoming like a drug. I'm like, I really
Yeah.
need to do it. And
Yeah,
on
yeah.
the days, that, like anybody else, we all deal with up and down and mental health and all of that. This has been my savior. Back in the day, I used to pour myself a glass of red wine. Now I go for a run. Here
You
you
know, you can
go.
still do that. You can still do that from time to time.
I still do it. Just don't do it every day.
Not every day.
That's
But I'm starting to think back to I remember a very specific time in optometry school. So we're talking years ago now. It was like just a couple hours, or we had a few hours until like a big exam, and I think just in our first year, everybody was really anxious, and I kind of like I feel other people's energy, and I was like, oh man, I'm starting to get really tense, and we had a few hours. Everybody's cramming, and I was like, dude, I just can't. My head's about to explode. I've never really been able to. At that point, I was feeling anxious. I wouldn't have known how to put that into words, but I was like, I have to go for a run, and everybody's looking at me like, "What? You're crazy. We have an exam in a few hours." And luckily, I lived at that time very close to a school. I lived just a few blocks away, so I went home, quickly changed. I went for like a 45-minute run, and our school's like right on the river there, Charles River in Boston. Beautiful. So went for a run. I came back, man. I felt so good,
Mhm.
and I went into the exam just like I'm good. And that's the one time I remember. I'm sure I've done it before that, but now, when that anxiety starts to build up, if I feel really tense about something, angry about something, man, hit the pavement, and things change dramatically. Those endorphins are real, and they make a big difference.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you get also all those tools to measure all of that. So I don't have any royalties or anything, but I'm going to endorse a product right there,
Okay.
right? I don't get money for it, just so we clear. But if anybody know about it, Whoop, company called Whoop, they're out of
Oh,
from Boston. It is a fantastic product. It's no screen, it's nothing. It's just there. It monitor your health, uh, that you just want to run a 5K or you want to run a triathlon, it doesn't matter, but it tracks, you know, not just your heart rate, but your oxygen level, your sleep, and your recovery. And I've been starting this not right away when I started running, but I'm probably on it now for 9 months. And I absolutely love the product. Interesting. If you're data freaks, which I'm not, but people who are really deep into data, it's I don't know,
cool.
it's a lot.
Whoop,
But it tracks your
WOOP.
recovery, and the idea of sleeping in particular, just sleeping, how important it is for your body, for
Mm,
your health, and I know you do health, and you go, and it's I always tell people you got to get your eye exam because you're not just for the vision, you see
yeah,
your own health in it.
that's
So
right.
keep on pushing people. I'm doing it.
That's it.
But it's this Whoop is really unbelievable. So they also have a great blue blocker,
Really?
yes,
Uh,
which I don't know who designed it, but it's really good.
I feel like the next thing you're gonna say is, also, by the way, they have a really great affiliate program. Here's my link you can use to buy your bracelet.
Yeah, no,
I
I
just
mean,
get
if you
10% of every sale that goes through this link.
no, though I did design the eyewear, so if you go check it out.
Get out of here. Did you?
Yes, I did. Great, and it was before I
What?
used the product,
That
by the way. So
okay, so what? So for those blue blockers, you designed the frames?
yes, and it's really interesting. So everything they do at
What?
Whoop is backed from science, and it's backed science and doctors, and it's an amazing company because it's really backed by science. I mean, they do crazy amount of data and research and testing before. So we developed, I designed the frame, but we developed lenses, and Whoop is all about recovery, and to get recovery, proper recovery, so your body is uh, in a great spot to exercise the next day, right?
That's
Uh,
amazing.
which is very important. Like when I started training, I was going, and I was like, I was pushing it too hard because you need to leave your body time
Yeah.
to recuperate. So this all those lenses, all those blue blockers are being tested for recovery in mind. And there's data online out there about, so there's two different type of lenses. There's a traditional one, and then there's one that has an orange tint colors, which is used for different purpose. But so it's very interesting.
That's
Love
am
love the company.
so from John Varvatos to State to Whoop, like, you've designed frames for, like,
Yeah,
everybody. It's
yeah.
incredible.
Well, again, it's really about the story, and it's really about the people,
Yeah,
right? I
that's
mean,
so cool, though. I think that's so amazing. But on the point of recovery, I like books. Um,
I wrote
I'm
it down.
actually
The other one, I wrote it down because I definitely gonna
yeah,
read
yeah,
it.
Wired to it's over there. It's not back here, so it's over there somewhere. Anyway, this one, I'm promoting this. I don't get anything from it, but I'm promoting this because this lady is legitimately like a Canadian legend, Haley Wickenheiser, and she actually was on the podcast. I was very fortunate to have her on the podcast a year or two ago. But in here, if I could find it,
What's
one
the
of
name
her
of the book?
chapters is actually maybe I won't find it. Oh, I think she just said it in one of her chapters. She said recovery. She looked at recovery. Somebody told her that recovery is a weapon
Mhm.
as an elite athlete, and it was an NHL, like an elite NHL player had told her as she was coming up, recovery is a weapon. You can't just work all the time. You have to know how to recover and let your body heal, and then you can come back even stronger.
Yeah,
And she makes a point to say when she took that information to heart and she actually started to look at recovery, sleep, and all the other stuff as a weapon, as part of her strengths, all of a sudden she actually got better. She was already at a point where she was pretty much better than everybody, and she got even better. So really a cool point, and maybe Whoop can take that and give me some royalties. But it's really cool that you're doing that, man. I think that's awesome.
um, yeah. It's a great product. It's really fascinating. And as you drill into it, and as and again, it's everybody's journey, right? It's You don't have to train for a triathlon. You don't have to, just what is, for me, I had a goal. My goal when I started all of that was three buddy of mine. We decided we're gonna go one night drinking probably too many of those cocktails around the fire pit. We decided that we're gonna go and hike, do the presidential trail,
Oh yeah,
and
tell me about that.
we did it like a few months ago, 2 months ago. That was my goal. But I realized training for it, I realized that it was not about the goal anymore. It was really about the journey of, going there. And then after I did it, I realized that, what is the next journey I want to be? It's not anymore about what is the next goal, is what is the next thing that I want to do. And you do it for yourself. It's just, it's so you want to run a 5 miles, you run a marathon, or go climbing, Mount Washington with on a snow day, which was great. Whatever it is, but
Seems like a
it's
good idea.
yeah, it's really, that journey. And I think life is done the same way. I think that, creating that story, finding the journey, what's, make you bored, and enjoying that boredom. I think that's what it is about.
This you just wrapped it all up beautifully and tied a little bow on it. That's wonderful, man. That honestly, this conversation, I knew this when we spoke before. I was like, there's so many like different things we can go with. So I didn't make any notes. I didn't write anything down as far as like, here's the topics we want to talk about. I just kind of wanted to go with it, and we covered a lot of different stuff. I think there's a lot of fun conversation content here in this conversation for hopefully for our audience to enjoy. Um, any final words you want to share with us before we part ways here?
Well, thanks so much for having me. I love your journey, and I'm following it, and
Thank you.
and your Insta, and seeing your beautiful family out there too. This is great, and it's I'm looking forward to the show, to this one, to the next one. So now by Vision Expo, the awards, that is in New York. So that's would be what's it, February, March, which it's going to be pretty big. It's going to be the second edition of the awards, and I'm really excited about it. So some big surprise coming out for that. But no, I mean, I'm excited to see what is this new journey under Untitled is going to bring, and how we're going to be able to have fun, make more collaboration, and
Change the industry.
yeah, I mean, it's not, the industry is growing, the industry is changing every day.
Yeah,
I'm trying to do my little part of it, and really just bringing, what I love to do to others to be able to enjoy all together. And I think
mm,
that's my journey for now. So
that's great. It's great, and I think you will continue to change. You've already impact. Let's maybe use the word impact. Then you'll continue to impact the industry. I think for the better. I think we should let's do a quick little moment to talk about uh, now and the awards. So that's not happening in Las Vegas. It's happening every year in New York at Vision Expo East. So make sure you look out for that when you're heading to New York. But what do we want to tell people about the awards? I think the awards is so amazing. So we want people to like watch out for the announcements, but like submit frames and things like that so they can kind of be entered into the awards and be involved in that. Is there anything you want to share regarding that?
yeah, so the now is a trend pavilion. There's trends that are decided every for every season. We change a committee every year, and through that process, we every exhibitors, every collection, every designer who are exhibiting at the show can enter the now awards. And last year was the first one. It was fantastic. We had amazing product. I'm
Mm,
looking to get even more amazing product this year, more engagement. But it was the reason why I created now was I felt that it was time for the industry, for the Vision Expo, to being able to represent the story and the trend and the beautiful work that everybody in the industry are doing, despite names, despite size of the company, despite pricing, despite everybody can be represented, and that's really what I wanted. But I mean, that's really open to everybody. It's
yeah,
that's democratic. That's what I want.
democratic.
There's a
Good.
democratic way about it, and it doesn't matter the size of your company. It doesn't matter if you have a brand, no brand, or whatever it is. And it was really good. I really enjoyed the process last year, so I'm still we're still doing it for next year. The only
Yeah,
reason why it's once a year, it's a lot of work, and and it leaves enough time for the companies to be ready, and to have that, to look at basically 6 months or 2 year, actually a year of development, and being like, okay, what is the product that I want to enter for that.
I
So
think I think annually is a good cadence. I don't think 6 months is probably too quick. It also things just in general. If something happens really frequently, it sort of loses its impact a bit, right? If it happens a little less frequency, there's a bit of a scarcity around it and like a more demand around it. So
yeah, and
really
working
great.
very closely with the show and the Vision Council to grow it. So we have new stuff coming up this year, which is pretty exciting.
Yeah,
And then the Optical Achievement Awards, which
awesome, man. Awesome. Nico, thank you so much for
Thank you
being
so
on the
much for having me.
podcast, for sharing all your insights, for doing everything that you're doing for the industry. I'm very excited, very, very excited to see what Untitled does and how it makes an impact and how you do as well. And I'm looking forward to seeing everything that comes from here, man. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, and see everybody at the show.
See everybody show. Thank you, everybody who's watching and listening to the 2020 podcast, Canada's number one optometry podcast. Don't forget, leave a review, please. We lost all our reviews. We need friends to send us ratings and reviews on Apple Podcasts, but also share the word, spread the word, share this with your friends. Put up a screenshot on Instagram. Tell us what you found interesting about this conversation. Put a link on LinkedIn or send it to a friend via text. I appreciate everybody spreading the word about the 2020 podcast. Thank you all. We'll see you guys soon.